What if the most feared being in the galaxy, the queen of an alien empire, arrived not to conquer Earth but to kneel before one human? No war cry, no demand, just silence and surrender. In a world where survival seemed impossible, one unexpected gesture changes everything. This isn't a battle story, this is the beginning of something bigger. And it starts with a question no one can answer. Why him? If you are new here, then please subscribe this channel and show thumbs up. By liking the video, let's move toward wonderful story. The stars over the moon of Orion flickered like fading lanterns, their light growing dim against the dark stretch of space. It was as if the universe was slowly closing its eyes, one blink at a time. Commander. Neelan Vera stood on the upper deck of Station Marin 9, watching the sky through the thick glass of the observation dome. He had always found peace in the stars, but tonight they offered no comfort. They felt distant, quiet, and almost watchful. The station was cold, both in temperature and spirit. Frost clung to the steel walls, and the low hum of the power core echoed through the halls like a whisper no one wanted to hear. Only 57 people remained inside the last human outpost on Orion. Most had been soldiers once, now reduced to survivors, engineers, and quiet thinkers. Their movements were slow and cautious, their voices soft. Everyone felt it. Something was coming. Neelan moved through the corridors, his boots clicking sharply against the metal floors. People nodded to him as he passed, but no one said much. His presence was enough. Not because he was loud or powerful, he was neither. But because he had survived too many close calls, led too many impossible missions, and kept standing when others fell. He was the kind of leader you didn't cheer for. You simply trusted him even when you were afraid. Deep below the station, the communication room blinked with activity. Red lights pulsed. Quiet tones sounded from machines that had been silent for months. Technician Lion Yori sat hunched over the console, his face pale and his fingers shaking slightly as he tapped on the screen. A signal had arrived. A real one. Not noise or distortion, but something organized, mathematical, intentional. Lion didn't wait. He called for the commander immediately. Neelan reached the room within minutes, stepping into the tight space and nodding once at Lion to begin. It came in from the outer grid, Lion said, his voice low but certain, encoded in a sequence I've never seen before. It's not from Earth, not from our system, but it's human. Neelan frowned. Human? The patterns, they match old human genetic markers. But not just that. They end in something strange. Lion tapped a key and brought up the visual. It was a black screen at first, then a shape took form. A tall, elegant figure with long limbs and glowing skin. Kneeling, before it, in shadow, stood a human outline. The room went still. No message, Neelan asked. No words, just this image. And a tone. It repeats. Neelan crossed his arms. He stared at the image, trying to understand. He had seen many threats in his life. But this didn't feel like a warning, it felt different. Like a puzzle left in plain sight, asking to be solved. Behind him, Lion whispered. Why would they kneel? I don't know, Neelan said, quietly. But we're going to find out. Later that night, the mood across the station shifted. People tried to act normal, but the signal had already changed things. It felt like the calm before something huge, like standing at the edge of a cliff with your feet just inches from falling and flying. Neelan returned to the observation dome just before his sleep cycle. He stared out at the stars again. Still dim. Still silent. He thought about the wars humanity had fought over the years, how many times survival had come at the cost of destruction. And yet, this signal, this moment, it didn't feel like war. It felt like invitation. He closed his eyes and saw the image again. The alien kneeling, the human standing tall. Not as a ruler, not as a god, but as something equal, maybe even connected. It didn't make sense. And yet, deep inside, Neelan knew this wasn't a trick. It was something else. Something that had been waiting a long time. In the quiet of the dome, a low tremor rolled through the floor. Just a flicker of motion like the heartbeat of the moon. Nyland didn't move. He simply looked up, into the stars that once gave him peace, and waited, because something was coming. And somehow, it was coming for him. Mira Sen woke from a dream that didn't feel like a dream at all. Her room was quiet, the soft hum of the station's power systems drifting in the background, but her heart was racing and her hands trembled as she sat up. She had seen eyes, not human eyes, watching her from behind something that looked like a window or maybe a mirror. They weren't full of hate or anger. They were patient. They were waiting. She got up slowly, padding across the cold floor, to the small sink in the corner. When she looked into the mirror, she gasped. Along her collarbone, faint glowing marks curved in a pattern she didn't recognize. They weren't painful, but they pulsed softly, like something alive beneath her skin. She pulled her shirt collar higher and left her room without another word. In the lower levels of Station Marin 9, the research lab was quiet. Most of the team worked on minimal shifts now, since resources were stretched thin. But today, Mira didn't wait for the others. She activated the main console and pulled up the signal they had received the day before. She had been studying it with data technician Orvin Clay, a man who rarely spoke unless the data surprised him. And yesterday, it had. The signal's patterns weren't just random. Mira and Orvin had noticed similarities between the shapes in the transmission and ancient carvings found on Earth. Carvings no one could explain. Stone markings from thousands of years ago that had no known origin. Symbols that didn't match any known language until now. Orvin entered the lab with a mug of coffee, pausing when he saw Mira already working. "You too?" he asked quietly. She nodded. Couldn't sleep. Dreamed of them again. He didn't ask for details. He simply set the mug down and sat beside her. They worked in silence for a while, comparing notes, running new scans on the strange image embedded in the signal. It always came back the same, a tall figure kneeling before a human silhouette. But there was more. As Mira adjusted one of the filters, a new sequence revealed itself. It had been hidden in a faint layer of the signal, barely there, like a whisper. Beneath a shout, the pattern showed movement, dozens of shapes moving in lines spaced with perfect symmetry. Not ships, but something else. Living things, maybe, or machines. Orvin leaned forward. "They're coming. This isn't just a message, it's a path." Mira stared at the screen, then pulled up the station's long-range scanner data. It hadn't shown anything new yesterday, but as the system recalibrated, her stomach sank. There it was. A formation. It wasn't fast. It wasn't loud, but it was moving with purpose, straight toward Orion. They sent the data to command right away. Within minutes, Commander Nyland was in the lab. His face was calm, but his eyes were sharp, taking in everything without a word. "What are we looking at?" he asked. Orvin showed him the formation. Mira showed him the hidden signal. Then she reached up and tugged down her collar just slightly, showing him the faint marks glowing along her skin. "I think they're marking us," she said. "Not with weapons, with recognition." Nyland didn't speak for a long time. When he finally did, he only said, "Prepare the upper watch decks, we need eyes on the sky." As the news spread through the station, tension grew. Soldiers checked their gear. Engineers secured the outer walls. But there was no alarm, no panic. Only a heavy silence like the kind that falls before a storm. Mira climbed to the upper levels with a group of observers. She took a position at the edge of the observation deck, looking through one of the high-powered scopes. Hours passed. The stars shifted. The twin moons of Orion rose higher. Then something moved. She saw them first. Shapes slipping through the shadows of space, glinting with light that didn't reflect. It shimmered from them like a glow from within. They were unlike anything she had ever seen. Not ships, not creatures, something between. And in the middle of the slow, perfect formation, there was one larger than the rest. It didn't move like the others. It floated, almost still, as if the others orbited it. Its shape was tall and strange, limbs long and curved, head high above the others. Even from a distance, Mira felt something strange in her chest, like the beat of a second heart, like being seen. She stepped back from the scope, breath caught in her throat. "She's here," she whispered, not knowing why she said it, or how she knew. All across the deck, people grew quiet. Even those who hadn't seen the figure yet seemed to feel it, something ancient, something watching. Orvin turned to Mira, eyes wide. "That's not a leader," he said. "That's a memory, and it remembers us." No one knew what would happen next, but one thing was certain. The Watcher had arrived, and she wasn't here to destroy. Not yet. She was here to meet someone. Talon Rowe stood on the outer defense wall of the outpost, staring into the pale horizon. The icy winds of Orion had picked up, brushing against his face and tugging at the corners of his coat. But he didn't move. No one on the wall did. They were all watching the same thing. Out there, just beyond the edge of visibility, shapes moved in silence. Not loud, not violent, but steady and smooth. They flowed like a river made of shadows and light, their forms gleaming faintly under the moons. It was them. The ones from the signal. The ones who were never supposed to come this close. Behind him, voices whispered across the comms. Orders, questions, small panicked breaths. But Talon barely heard them. His eyes were locked on the tallest figure at the center of the formation. She wasn't walking. She floated just above the surface, her body surrounded by a soft glow that seemed to pulse with her movements. Even from this distance, Talon could feel something pressing against his chest, like the air itself was holding its breath. The others noticed too. One by one, soldiers lowered their rifles. Not because they had been told to. It just happened. Like an unseen force passed over them, whispering that something important was about to take place. Talon swallowed hard and shifted his stance. It was hard to think clearly. A strange quiet had settled over the outpost, so deep it made every small sound echo like thunder. Inside the control room, Commander Nylan Vera watched the same scene unfold on the monitors. He didn't flinch when the Queen came fully into view. Her form was not monstrous, not sharp or terrifying. It was graceful. Her limbs were long and curved, covered in layers of glowing plates that shimmered like wet stone. From her head, soft tendrils swayed gently in the wind, and her eyes, two deep, endless voids, were fixed on the outpost, or more precisely on him. Nylan knew that gaze. He had felt it for days now, in dreams, in the sound of static, in the way his thoughts pulled toward the sky even when he tried to focus. He couldn't explain it, but he knew she wasn't here by accident. She was here for him. Without waiting for permission or backup, Nylan left the control room and walked the length of the outpost. He passed soldiers who stepped aside without question, their eyes wide with confusion and fear. Talon watched as the commander approached, calm and unshaken. Without a word, Nylan climbed the battlement beside him and looked toward the approaching Queen. Then she stopped. The entire formation came to a halt as if frozen in time. Dust swirled around them, lit by the glow of the twin moons. And then it happened. She knelt. The massive, otherworldly Queen lowered herself slowly to the ground, her head bowing forward until it nearly touched the surface. Behind her, every one of her kind followed suit. Thousands of figures dropped to their knees, their forms folding gracefully, their heads turned downward in complete silence. It was not a show of weakness, it was something else, something older than war. Talon's breath caught in his throat. "Why is she bowing?" he whispered. Nylan didn't answer. He felt it in his chest again, the deep, slow pulse like the rhythm of the universe itself beating in time with his thoughts. As he watched, a shimmer appeared above the Queen, forming into a glowing projection. It unfolded like a flower, revealing two images, one of Earth blackened and broken, cities crumbling and oceans burning, the other of Earth alive and green, full of light and peace. Between them floated a symbol neither human nor alien, but familiar in a way that made the mind ache. It offered no explanation, just a choice. The queen raised her head. Her eyes met Neelan's again, and he felt her voice, not through sound, but through feeling. A message moved through him like wind through leaves. She was not his enemy. She was not here to destroy. She was here to offer something. The others watched from the walls, frozen in awe and fear. Some shouted for action, others begged for patience. But no one moved. Everyone waited for the commander to speak, to act. But Neelan could not yet answer. He didn't know what it meant, what it would cost. He only knew one thing. She was not bowing to humanity. She was bowing to him. And the question burned quietly, in his chest, louder than any scream. Why him? Lara Talon had never seen the stars so bright. From the moment she stepped outside the gates of the outpost, she could feel them, watching, pulsing above her like distant eyes full of secrets. The queen stood only a few steps ahead, tall and glowing, her body moving with the grace of wind through water. Around her, the alien warriors remained still, not like statues, but like trees before a storm. Everything felt alive and waiting. Commander Nylan Vera stood beside Lyra, silent but steady. He had not spoken much since the queen knelt before him. He didn't have to. Something had passed between them, something beyond words. Lyra, trained to feel emotions more than hear them, could sense the weight of it all. She had been sent to join him as an empath, someone who could help read the queen's true intentions. But even she was not prepared for the depth of what she felt now. When they reached the queen, she extended her arm again. Nylan didn't hesitate. He placed his hand gently into hers. A glow burst around them, not blinding, not painful. It was soft and warm, like the feeling of sunlight after a long night. Then the world around them vanished. There was no movement, no sound, only light. Swirls of color spun through the air like ribbons. Lyra felt her feet leave the ground, but she wasn't afraid. She was part of something larger, something that hummed with life and time itself. When the light faded, they were no longer on Orion. They stood in a vast chamber that defied understanding. Its walls pulsed like breathing crystal, lit from within by shifting patterns of color. Strange plants grew along the edges, glowing gently. In the center of the room stood a tall spire of smooth stone that sang with a quiet hum, as if it remembered every voice that had ever passed through it. Around the spire, figures gathered, alien beings of many shapes and sizes, none hostile, none afraid. They stood in silence, watching Neelan, watching Lyra, waiting. Lyra realized they had all come for this one moment, this one meeting. The queen stepped forward, her tendrils moving like silver threads in the air. She spoke without sound. Lyra felt it first, a deep wave of emotion washing over her like the tide. Peace, memory, hope, and something more. Sorrow. A long, aching sadness that reached across centuries. Neelan closed his eyes as the feeling passed through him. The queen was not showing them power or fear. She was showing them history. A long story told not with words but with hearts. She shared her people's past, how they had searched the stars not for conquest, but for connection. How they had once reached out to others only to be met with war. Over time they had stopped trying, but then something changed. They found Earth, and something in humans called to them. Not because humans were stronger, not because they were smarter, but because they had spirit. They endured even when broken. They rebuilt, even after great loss. And in one man, Nylan, they saw a mirror of something they thought they had lost long ago. Lyra touched her chest, tears forming in her eyes. She had never felt anything so pure. The queen was offering more than peace. She was offering a path forward, together. A joining of stories, not as ruler and servant, as allies. But the gift came with a choice. Nylan turned to face the queen. Her eyes, black and deep as space, met his. Slowly, she reached forward again, palm open. She was not demanding, she was inviting. Behind them, the image of Earth shimmered into view once more. Two versions side by side, one broken, one healed. The choice stood between them like a gate. Lyra held her breath. This was the moment. Neelan stepped forward and placed his hand in hers once again. Energy rushed through the room, and the crystal walls brightened. The figures around the spire lowered, their heads, not in submission, but in recognition. The gate between stars had been opened, not by force, but by trust. When they returned to the outpost, the sky looked different. The stars no longer blinked like distant warnings. They shined, like beacons. Behind Neelan walked a new group, not just aliens but envoys, partners. The war never came, because one man stepped forward, because one woman felt the truth, and because a queen, ancient and wise, chose to kneel, not in defeat, but in hope. The story of Earth would not end in fire. It would begin again, with a single step through a gate no one had known was there until it opened.